Aw, man. When I have to use a YouTube safe word, I always use jerkwad. Now they're trying to mess with my database and make me say the other word. Whatever. Here we go. Fellow scumbags, what's the worst thing you've ever done? Story 1. To preface this, it's important to note that I ate a ton of Taco Bell right before bed the night before the funeral showing. Not sure of everything I had, but there was definitely a burrito supreme in there. Anyway, let's back up a couple of days. I was looking forward to a weekend in Chicago for an annual trip for people in our major. Unfortunately, my on-again, off-again ex-girlfriend's grandma passed away. Despite ex being a general bummer of an individual, I offered to pass up the trip and be by her side. Cut to the post-Taco Bell morning, I awoke and felt a small cavernous rumble of gas that shalt not pass. You know when it's going to be bad? The relative's house we stayed with her big old family was not large, so I couldn't even find an unoccupied room nor a walk-in closet to fart in. So it sticks in my stomach and churns. We get dressed and get to the showing, and the fart seems to have calmed, but it's still in there. Most of the family walks up to talk to each other, and I begin to see an opportunity to release at least a portion of this tainted copy of Airbud Strikes Back that was now showing in my... It seemed perfect. Finally, some relief. So I remained seated as they dissipated and did the deed. I knew it would be silent, but I had no idea it would be that deadly. Pretty sure it increased the room temperature and humidity of the room. It was hot, dense, and dark. It honestly smelled like a dog did it, or some sort of dog/human hybrid. The family started to notice the smell, and then a ton of others nearby did as well, and they started looking for the source. Now, folks, I'm pretty laid back, and I was super tired. I'm no actor by any means, but I think some kind of innate human instincts for preservation came into play to keep me from taking the blame for that anti-enchilada. I denied that I supplied and was acquitted of the chunk charges. But what happened next made me a scumbag. Seconds later, a dude in a wheelchair came through the crowd of us. One of her family members was like, "Do you think it was him?" And I composed myself and was like, "Yeah, I didn't notice the smell until he came in the room." I'd say I felt bad for all of this, but I still laugh every time I remember hearing X's concerned mother say, "I wonder if he rolled his wheels through something." Ta-da! I'm trash forever. At least the mother was willing to blame the wheels being run through something than the disabled person. Why in the world would it follow that the disabled person was the cause of it? Why would people believe that he was most likely the cause? Do people think because someone can't use their legs that farts travel more easily through the butt or something? Story 2. I started dating this girl in high school that went to a different high school. She had a few friends who went to my school, including this guy named Aaron. I never really talked to Aaron, but he was in one of my classes and seemed like a nice guy, so I started to talk to him on occasion. I didn't really know what to say, so I would just casually bring up my girlfriend around him, but it never led to any conversation, which was surprising because he was a pretty charismatic guy. About a year later, my then-girlfriend and I were watching TV, and a character dialed someone on accident, and she said, "Ugh, that happened to me when I was dating Aaron." This surprised me because we had already talked about all of our exes, and Aaron was never named. I mentioned this, and she swore up and down that she told me that her and Aaron dated. I'm still convinced she never told me. I was a little mad, but I knew she wasn't hiding that from me and just must have forgotten to mention it. That's when I remembered how I was trying to become friends with this dude by constantly rubbing in his face that I was dating his ex. He must have really thought I was a total scumbag. Okay, this doesn't seem like a deliberate attempt at scumbaggery. At most, this could be scumbaggery by association. But what about the Aaron dude? Did the guy just not mention that he dated the girlfriend at all? All those attempts at conversation and the subject never came up? Story 3. Some really young kids were constantly harassing my mom because, when she could, she would give out candy to all of the tenants that rented from her in one of the mega apartment complexes she managed. They would come to the door at all hours asking for candy, and if she didn't have any, they would call her names, swear at her, and throw things at her door. I went to visit one day when she wasn't home, but my little brother was there. He was all psyched to show me this unbelievably hot Komodo dragon chili pepper he had gotten his hands on. He asked if I wanted to try a sliver, and of course I said no. Just as he started cutting it up for himself, these kids come to the door. They asked if we had any candy, and I said no, and they asked for the old lady that lived there. I said, "Whoa, little man, you shouldn't say stuff like that," and they ran laughing. My little brother tells me about these kids, and he gets an idea. He had some of those frosted multicolored gumdrops. So we took just the green ones, carefully cut them open, and placed part of this pepper in the middle of them. While we're performing the surgery, these kids keep knocking at the door and running away. Finally, we open the door and say, "Hey, we found some candy." I offer the bowl of these things, and they grab handfuls of them and take off. About 15 minutes later, we hear this sound like an ambulance getting softer, then louder, softer, then louder. We look out the window, and there is one of the kids running around in circles and stuffing his shirt in his mouth, bawling. At the time, we thought this was hilarious. What we didn't expect was a few minutes later when we heard the kid outside the door with his dad. I open the door, and the dad looks at me and says, "I'm sorry, but my son said you gave him bad candy." I said, "I apologize. We had some gumdrops in the back, and I know my mom usually gives the kids candy, but that there may be some hot ones in the mix." He looks at his son, smacks him on the back of the head, and says, "Suck it up. You've had hot candy before." The kid, still crying and in between stuttered breaths, manages to eke out, "Not this hot." The dad actually apologized to us. I found out those kids never bothered my mom again, and that one probably never ate a green gumdrop again in his life. Okay, what do you think about this story? Scumbag or avenging angel? I think for a story to truly qualify as pure scumbaggery, the victim must have really not deserved it. Maybe they were innocent and caught in the crossfire. Let's face it, these kids were brats. Story 4. This girl in high school told everyone I egged her house and was sleeping with her boyfriend. I didn't egg her house. It just seems that apparently she was just hated by more people than me, which frankly made sense. And I definitely wasn't sleeping with her trashy boyfriend, nor did I have any interest in doing so. At first, it was just annoying, but more and more people were making comments or saying those were really crappy things to do, or threatened to egg my house back. And finally, someone came into where I worked and made a comment about it while I was on shift. I was so mad, I egged her house and slept with her boyfriend. If I was going to get blamed for it, might as well make an honest woman out of her. Story 5. About 10 years ago, started dating a girl who often stayed over at my house and used my computer. She was active on a modeling site, and at the time MySpace was a thing. I went on MySpace one day to check my account, and I had a ton of messages, and when I clicked onto the first one, I realized she had left her account logged in, and I was in her account. Found out very quickly she was cheating on me, with guys and girls. I confronted her and got all kinds of scumbag denials from her. So, I took several of her modeling pictures and posted them on the casual encounters section of Craigslist along with her phone number. She got a lot of calls, from what I understand. Story 6. A long time ago, younger, singler, and dumber me worked a telephone survey job. I was terrible at it, but generally tried my best. Sometimes, though, I get bored. And you know what they say about idle hands. Every once in a while, we get an answering machine. The thing is, folks don't generally remember what they record for their message. If they said their names, I'd strike. If the message was something like, "This is Bob and Sally, leave a message," I'd record, "Hey, Sally, just wanted to say I had a great time this weekend. Thanks." I imagine there would be some passionate conversations after that. Questions to the effect of, "If you don't know him, how does he know your name?" I'm not proud of it. You know, there's a lot of reasons to hate call centers like this. Adding one more reason, like leaving malicious messages on people's answering machines, doesn't really do much to change the status. Was no one able to trace this call back to this guy? Maybe the call center masked their caller ID. If they were masking their caller ID, maybe this call center wasn't doing anything purely above board. Story 7. Lurking. Had to chime in. It was one of my favorite pranks. In high school, my brother and best friend were on a pranking war. While in college, sneak over to the other's car, soap it, etc. The line was finally drawn when my friend Brian dumped glitter into the air ducts of my brother's car. It was a hot summer day. Brother jumps into his car, cranks the AC up, gold glitter everywhere. It was all over him, his hockey equipment, and delivery. He was working as a Jimmy John's delivery boy at the time. Still, we find glitter in places in the car. It was like a stripper exploded in there. I tipped my hat to that one, but God, I was happy to be out of the line of fire. Story 8. I wasn't really dating this girl in college. We were just seriously flirting for a few months. I was even her date to a few of her sorority events. A few of her friends even told me she would like to date me. All I had to do was just ask and she'd gladly accept. She had strong feelings for me, I could tell. I had feelings for her too. Then, her 1 year older sister graduated from Stanford and moved to our city for work. She moved in with her and their other roommate. Long story short, over the course of a few months after getting to know and hanging out with her sister a few times, I smashed her. We smashed like a dozen times over a couple of months. It was so scummy because she was just so into me and was so sweet to me. Seriously, we would partially act like boyfriend and girlfriend in public sometimes. All the while I was smashing her sister behind her back. Story 9. Summer before 8th grade, I used to spend prolonged periods of time with friends. One friend and I usually ended up feuding about the most juvenile things. Who got the best unaliving on Halo? Who got the last slice of pizza? We'd sock each other, mess with the other person's food, trip each other, throw dirt clods, and be hurt but laugh hysterically. It was like a long-term tennis match of shenanigans. Before we had resolved our most recent feud, my mom came to pick me up from his house. I was enjoying a bowl of clam chowder from his pantry and was still plotting how to strike. So naturally, I hid the bowl of clam chowder under his bed against the wall and nestled it behind some forgotten articles of clothing and left, trying not to laugh. At least a whole week goes by and we're talking on the landline. And he's interrupted repeatedly by his small dog growling and whimpering. He interrupts me many times to shout, "Toby, shut up! I'm on the phone!" I forgot about the crusty chowder altogether until I hear him drag his dog away from the bed where Toby was trying to go. And it gets uncomfortably quiet before I hear, "Clam chowder? You scumbag!" And it all comes back to me and I laugh until I'm hung up on. We're still friends and hang out without the gimmicks 15 years later. He still brings it up and I'm still ashamed, but it still makes me laugh. There's more. I was a menace as a kid, but after confessing this to my wife, she suggested I share here. Who in 8th grade sits down to a snack of clam chowder? Is it me, or does clam chowder not seem like an 8th grade staple of food? In a way, it seems like a weird confirmation of how close their friendship was when not only were they hanging out at this person's house, but he was casually enjoying clam chowder. Helping yourself to a soda or some chips or something I can understand. But clam chowder? That seems like something the mom would argue about when they're grocery shopping. Of course I have to get the clam chowder. Nobody eats it except your weird friend. I don't want to be rude to our house guests. Story 10. This still haunts me to this day, despite how petty it is. In reception, kindergarten, we would all get a carton of milk every day at break time. Each time, 2 kids would go and cut the plastic encasing the cartons with plastic safety scissors. This kid and I get chosen to do it, and when we get there, I decide to cut my jumper with the scissors for no reason, really. People notice and ask how it happened, and because I don't want to get in trouble, I say that the other kid did it. Of course, he denied it, but I was stupidly persistent. I kept saying he did it, but giving really dumb explanations. I was asked what exactly happened, and all I said was he came up to me and cut my jumper. I eventually confessed, crying to my mom, and I felt guilty ever since. Also, one time they were giving out oranges, and I took 2 oranges when they said we could only take 1. Story 11. Middle school stuff. When girls annoyed me in junior high, I would write notes like they were from friend to friend. I would make up terrible things about them and drop them in hallways. Got sick of washing dishes by day 2 in home ec. Started breaking dishes on purpose until the teacher wouldn't let me wash or dry anymore. Didn't want to sew the assigned project, so I hired a classmate. Spent my time sewing the same wing from a bird for the entire semester. Classmate would just toss me finished pieces as they were completed. Met with the vice principal, who was trying to turn me around in life. Spent the hour telling him in no uncertain terms that I had planned my life already and was going to play professional sports. I didn't play sports. He knew I was being a jerk, but kept trying. Nope. Just sat there going on and on about my sports plans like I was totally legit. Story 12. This definitely isn't the worst, but it's funny. I was 7 months pregnant with my son, and my ex's driver's side door was broken and couldn't be opened, so he had to climb over the passenger seat to get out. I had just eaten a double cheeseburger and Skittles for lunch, and he was being kind of a pain in the so I thought a fart in the car upon my exiting would be funny. Problem was, he was already halfway over the passenger seat, and when I stuck my butt in the car to fart, his face was really close to my butt, and so I farted right in his face. I laughed so hard, I cried and farted again. He was screaming and yelling, and I just kept laughing harder. He didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. In hindsight, it was worth it. The timing of the fart is just chef's kiss. But why does the story have to mention she was 7 months pregnant? Nothing against it, of course, but does being pregnant make your fart smell worse? If anything, I think it was the double cheeseburger and Skittles that contributed to the smell. Story 13. Swapped out my broken PlayStation with a neighbor kid's PlayStation. Literally ran to my house when he went down for supper and swapped them out before he came back upstairs. He called my house asking if his PlayStation was working fine when he was gone. I, of course, acted as if nothing seemed wrong with it. Felt so bad I ended up having another opportunity that weekend and swapped them back again. I felt a little better when he called later that day super excited that his PlayStation worked again. Yeah, 12-year-old me was a grade A scumbag. Story 14. Back in high school, I was dating this one girl and frankly was quite into her. Then I kept getting told over and over she was banging some other guys. Me being naive, didn't believe it because we were so perfect together. Fast forward a couple more months and I found out the rumors were true. So I figured, what the heck, might as well blow this bridge up. I went over one night and things started getting hot and heavy. I told her the condoms were in my car and I'd be right back. And since she was already naked, to keep playing with herself until I returned. I walked out of her room and downstairs and told her dad that she wanted to talk to him. I then beelined right to my car and drove home. Had quite the wonderful message from her when I got there. Story 15. In high school, I dated a girl briefly whose brother had recently passed. She had his old car. I made her drive me around to get some herb and other stuff, and we smashed in her late brother's car. Then, when she dropped me off, I broke up with her because I really just wanted a ride and a lay. Later, I realized I had left my substances in her car, so I called her, got back together, got my substances, and broke up with her again. But not before getting one last lay-in. I was a bad person in high school. Years later, I did make amends with her, and we found a way to move past that hogwash I pulled. I'm not gonna lie, the way this kid acted kinda creeped me out when I read it. Yeah, he was a high schooler, but he was also acting like a straight-up sociopath. Yeah, some would argue that many high schoolers are sociopaths to begin with. Story 16. I had one of my non-band girlfriends pants a girl during marching practice one afternoon, circa 1980. If ever a girl needed pantsing, it was she. This girl was prissy, bossy, and thought she was way better than everyone else, correcting people's technique and generally being insufferable. Not only did the whole band witness this, but the football team was practicing, so they saw it all go down, too. She was wearing flowery, full-coverage old lady underpants and let out a shriek that made sure everyone in the vicinity looked. It was glorious. Story 17. Was delivering pizza and pasta for a regional Grubhub thing. Getting out of the car, the pasta spilled onto the floor of my dirty old Jeep Wrangler. The decent thing would have been to go back to the restaurant and eat the $10. Instead, I scooped the pasta up and put it back in the tin with car dirt and fuzz and all, and delivered it to the customers. I was fired within 2 hours and am now known as Pasta Fingers to my friends. Story 18. In 4th grade, I sat next to this kid that had some spine deformation, and it meant he was confined to a wheelchair. Everyone felt bad for him and was so nice to him, but I didn't like him. He came off as entitled. I was one of those smart kids that would finish all my tests in 10 minutes so I could read Star Wars Expanded Universe books. Well, I noticed during one math test the wheelchair kid was copying my answers. I answered every question wrong, and when he turned over his test to show he was done, I quickly changed all my answers to being correct. He failed that test, got a 0. 9 years later, when we were seniors in high school, he ended up passing away. I went to his funeral. A lot of my classmates went and were so distraught. But me? Free day off school. So, was the wheelchair kid a scumbag too? Did people give him a pass and just ignore his personality? Was there anyone else in this class that secretly disliked the wheelchair kid's personality? I think there had to be at least one other person, and just because this kid was in a wheelchair, they didn't say anything for fear of repercussion socially? Or just genuinely felt sorry for the kid?
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 19. I don't know if this is a scumbag thing, but I headed into a public bathroom once because I was about to explode from Szechuan food. But just before I was about to unleash havoc, the guy in the next stall got a phone call, so I held it until he answered, and right after he said hello, I pushed with as much force as I could muster, devastating the toilet and sending out a very satisfied and resounding diarrhea noise. I don't actually feel bad about it. You shouldn't answer the phone in a public bathroom, but he probably thought I was a scumbag. There was no mistaking they heard that mess on the other end of that call. Story 20. One night when I was 16, alone in the house and bored, I stole a bottle of alcohol out of my parents' bar. I took it to my room where, with great care, I slowly peeled back the tack strip, opened it up, and poured it out into a bunch of cups. I then filled it with water, resealed it, and put it back under the bar. The perfect crime. Fast forward 6 months. My transgression completely forgotten. It's Christmas time, and my mom is going out to her company Christmas party. Before she leaves, she hands me that bottle of alcohol and asks me to wrap it for her. Story 21. My friend dressed up in drag for Halloween. I took all his pics and uploaded them to a dating website detailing his story of how he was becoming a woman and was in transition. A coworker of his found them and the profile, and long story short, it turned into a real mess. People thought it was true, offered support and help, etc. He obviously denied it all, as he really had no clue about it. And the more he tried to deny it, the more people tried to be his friend and help him. Thing is, I forgot all about it, and he was too mad at me to talk to me and tell me to take it down, so it stayed up for months before we hugged it out over drinks and had a few good laughs. With everything happening in the trans community, I wonder how recent this story is. I was actually prepared for people to start giving this guy some sort of flack or hate. It's actually kind of funny that he was being inundated with support and love and caring and talking, not being bullied at all. Story 22. This probably isn't the worst, but I feel bad about it now. So this was when I was in trade school. The vending machine for snacks, cokes, and energy drinks also took cards. How it worked was you slid your card, punched in the code for what you wanted, and then hit end to end purchase. The thing was, the last part wasn't explicitly stated. So I'd wait by the machine for somebody to swipe their card, then buy something when they left. I'd get 2 or 3 things on their card. Free energy drinks. Drink some, trade one for some cigarettes. So, yeah, pretty scummy. Story 23. Once while driving, a guy hopped on the road with his car right in front of me, while there was no one behind me. Then he continued driving under the speed limit like a scumbag. So the first chance I had, I overtook him, and right as we approached a green light, I slowed down so he was stuck behind me. Just as the light turned orange, I accelerated again. I was able to jump the orange. He hit a red light and had to wait. Girlfriend called me a scumbag. I call it payback. Story 24. I was a bit of a klepto as a kid. Over the course of a summer, think I was 7 or 8, I stole at least half a dozen Tamagotchis from various kids at summer camp. I had one of my own, so nobody suspected me. All the kids blamed the poor kid at camp, but the counselors could never recover them. I hid them in my bedroom and let them all perish. I think the most scumbag part of this story is this kid just letting all those Tamagotchis expire. That almost squarely puts him on the path to becoming a psychopath. I really hope that poor kid didn't get too much blame. I mean, where was the poor kid gonna hide all those Tamagotchis? Story 25. In college, I attended a house party with a group of my friends. About 3 hours into the party, I notice everyone is flocking to the backyard. I follow the crowd and realize that my group of friends has gotten into a fight with another group of guys. As I approach, I hear a girl say, "This is ridiculous! I'm calling the police!" I look at her and say, "You're obviously wasted. You're slurring your words. Let me talk to the police." She hands me her phone, and I threw it as far as I possibly could. Yelled to my friends, "Yo, we gotta get out of here now," and we all bolted. Always kind of felt bad after throwing her phone, but hey, I'm a problem solver. Story 26. I replaced this guy's vape juice with olive oil as payback for him stealing my mother's liquor. Then I called his parents and told him that their son was drinking our liquor. I knew they were strict because the father was a pastor. Last I heard of him, he's registered to join the Marines. Story 27. When I was 6 years old, my dad spent all day recording songs off the radio onto a tape. He gave it to me when I got home from school. I listened to one song, told him I don't like that kind of music, and recorded over everything he'd assembled. I still feel horrible about it. I recently told him about the guilt and apologized, and he doesn't know what the I'm talking about. I don't know, what do you make of that situation? Did the dad block out the pain? Was it just a trivial thing for him? It does make this person look like a scumbag. The dad just wanted to do something nice for his kid, and the kid does this? Story 28. Took a picture of my friend's car and put it on Craigslist for half the Kelly Blue Book value. I put a story about being called up for active duty and that I just needed to get rid of the vehicle fast. Put his cell phone number in the ad and said, "Contact 24/7, need car gone." For 3 days, he received over 60 calls an hour all day and night. It was glorious. Story 29. When I was a kid, I put some dishwashing liquid and water in a squirt gun. When the ice cream man came, he asked what I wanted. I said I wanted a drumstick, so he reached into the freezer and waited for the money. I didn't have any, so he asked why I did that. I said I do want it, I just don't have any money. He got mad, and I squirted him in the eyes with the soapy water. Why did I do it? I think I was mad that we never had money for stuff like that, and here he was parading it in my face every day. It's been about 50 years, and I still feel bad about it. Story 30. My friend invited me over to get wasted while his parents were away. We were both 14 years old, this was a long time ago, and we got very inebriated. When he went to sleep that night, I filled his eye sockets with PVA glue, and when he woke up in the morning, he thought he had wasted himself blind. It was hilarious. I cringe at that story. I've been wearing glasses for a long time. I've also worn contact lenses for a long time. It took me forever to get used to having my fingers that close to my eye just so I could see. I'm still aware of how delicate eyeballs can be. Having PVC on your eyelids and having them glued shut is dangerous. Story 31. On holiday in a hotel I didn't know very well and had to look after my little brother. I needed to poop. Bad. Couldn't find where a toilet was, so dragged him into an empty jacuzzi and took a dump in it. We both screamed and ran out as it floated to the top and managed to convince him it was already there when we got in. Story 32. I went to an ultimate frisbee tournament as a coach one year in middle school. In the finals match, the opposing coach asked why I wasn't playing. I told him my make-a-wish was to coach a frisbee team, assuming he would get that I was joking. He replied by telling me his son was getting his wish in the coming month. His face when I said I was joking and apologized still haunts me. Story 33. I was 17. Picked up herb for a friend, smoked some of it, then put some parsley in it and said it was just shake. He was in the car with us and smoked a bowl. You could hear him smack his lips with a weird taste. I laughed, told him, and never reimbursed him for it. At that age, you are the worst version of yourself. Story 34. College friend burned her whole apartment building to the ground. Not a joke. About 10 minutes after the fact, while we were literally sitting there watching the whole building engulfed in flames, I tried to lighten the mood and turned to her and said, "What the hell? Were you trying to cook something?" It was a grease fire. She was cooking bacon. She started crying, and I felt terrible. Story 35. The girl who liked me, but I didn't know it, was on a bridge with me, and there was a gorgeous sunset. She looked at me and told me that the sunset was really beautiful and that her heart was beating really fast. I didn't understand and told her mine wasn't. I don't really like her, and it was really weird when it happened. Story 36. At a house party, multiple people slept over. My friend was on a queen-sized bed by himself. I grabbed him and put him on the floor and then pushed him under the bed. He was super wasted. He woke up in the morning still wasted and screaming. For a couple of seconds, he thought he was in a coffin. Story 37. I'll start things off. Stole a chocolate bar from a shop when I was like 9 to get in good with the older, cooler kids. Felt so bad, I went back at 16 and gave the man the chocolate bar back and paid what I owed. Story 38. Kept a relationship going for a few extra weeks after cheating on her. She knew and wanted to give it another shot, but I had cheated because I wanted out. Then I forgot she got me an amazing birthday gift. I still feel terrible about it. Teenagers are... That seems to be the theme of this whole scumbag topic. Teenagers can and are indeed scumbags. It's kind of weird how that works out. Teenagers are just discovering all these emotions that they're trying to deal with, but they end up just walking all over other people's emotions. The way some teenagers act, you'd think they'd never grow out of what they act like. Story 39. When I was 13, on a really hot day in summer, a girl was picking on me in science class. So I chopped off a piece of liver we were dissecting and put it in her school bag. Apparently, it stank on the school bus at the end of the day. Story 40. In a camp, sleeping in bags with other kids, peed myself at night, so I peed on the kid next to me to blame him. Made it look like the pee got to my side. Twice. On the same kid. Story 41. My sister asked me to get her a bowl of cereal. I poured the milk first, and then put the cereal and gave it to her. Story 42. When I was in college and broke, I used to put my parking tickets on a similar model and color car. Most of them got paid. Story 43. Someone was blocking the aisle with a big old cart, so I moved it out of the way with my cart without saying, "Excuse me." Story 44. I was in grade 3 to 5. I will always put a page of a XXX magazine before I return the books at the end of the semester. Story 45. I dropped an open packet of ketchup onto the seat of a girl that ticked me off in middle school. She had white pants on. Story 46. Broke up with my college girlfriend over the phone a week after saying "I love you" to get her to do. Also, I was playing Warcraft 3 on mute while she cried. Story 47. I stole The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening from a classmate when I was 7 years old. My guilt reached fever pitch when the game itself started calling me thief. Story 48. Put laxatives in a can of Fanta and offered it to a girl I didn't like in high school. Story 49. I stole one piece from 1,000 jigsaw puzzles at a naming ceremony I attended with my parents. Story 50. My friend told some friends I was a virgin at 21. Many girls decided to take my virginity. Story 51. When in high school, I attended a house party at some chick's house who sucked. I stole all her TV remotes. Story 52. When I was in Japan, I recycled my plastic bottles with the cap still on. Story 53. Forget about controversial. New is where the juicy stuff is at. Story 54. Asked a girl to date me. Realized I'd made a terrible mistake. Dumped her 4 days later on Valentine's Day. Yikes. Story 55. Remember to sort by controversial. Story 56. I introduced my brother to his wife. I am so sorry, man. Story 57. I stole pasta sauce from Tesco. Story 58. I never seeded my torrents after completion. Story 59. Knocked up a friend's wife.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.